it was last October, I think, that we set this up. So I had no idea where I would be in terms of some writing I was doing, and I had the contract for a book about John Brown, and I thought, well, maybe it'll be out by August, who knows. But this is a very long story, and some of you know my other works, which I have some over here, and it's been a very busy year for me. Breaking Trail, would you hold that up? There's a new edition of Breaking Trail just came out, which I wrote with Peggy Lynn, the folk singer, 21 years ago, and it was out of print, and Purple Mountain Press, new owners took over, and the first thing they did was put out a new edition of Breaking Trail, so we're really thrilled about that. But what I'm here to talk about tonight, supposedly, is a book called John Brown in New York: The Man, His Family, and the Adirondack Landscape. And here it is. Those are the final page proofs. I put in my final corrections. I think it was Monday. Hopefully it'll be going to the printer next week. So I can't make any more changes. So whatever's said here tonight, I can't make any more. They are so sick of me making changes. I did 3 major rewrites of this book, and so I want to step. I don't think I need the microphone. I talk pretty loud. Is everyone okay?
Yeah.
All right. So this story starts a long time ago. Are you okay, John?
Just being funny.
Where was I? Oh, so this starts a long time ago, right, John? This starts back when I first started coming to the Adirondacks, like 40 years ago. And I came as a hiker, and I immediately fell in love with the history of the Adirondacks. And, you know, my background's in math, computer science. I have an MBA in statistics. I taught internet and HTML and all that stuff back in the day. But when I fell in love with the Adirondacks and started wanting to know everything there was about every place that I saw here, forget about that other life. Like, this was it for me. And this became my passion. And 12 years ago, Dave and I moved up here full-time into our 100-year-old log cabin that was not winterized. Somehow we survived. And so I'm really living the dream and getting to be writing and exploring the Adirondacks full-time. So, this book. So very early on in coming up here, I had 2 young daughters, so I was looking for stories about Adirondack women that I could tell my daughters and inspire them. And I found Esther Mountain, the only high peak name for a woman at the time. So that was the first book that I wrote about the history of Esther. But right early in those early days, I also started going to the John Brown farm, and I was interested, not in John Brown, I was interested in Mary Brown. And so I started researching the life of Mary Brown. And I started writing articles, Civil War Times, and there's a chapter in the Breaking Trail book about Mary Brown. And I was the artist in resident at the Harpers Ferry National Historic Park. So I got to spend a month living in downtown Harpers Ferry, in the oldest building there, in the Harper's house or whatever it was. It was like this 3-story, creepy old building, and I was the only one there. It was kind of weird, especially when the ghost tour went by at night past my door. But I learned so much by being immersed in Harpers Ferry, because of course you had Harpers Ferry in contrast to North Alba, and you'll understand that more when you read the book, not if you read the book, when you read the book. So that was back in 2001. I was really immersed in Mary Brown. I did portrayals of Mary Brown. I mean, I was going to write a biography of Mary Brown. That's what I was going to write about. And everybody's like, oh, what about you? I'm not interested in John Brown. I'm not going to write about John Brown. Okay? I'm not going to write a biography of John Brown. I'm not interested in that. Well, life goes on. and I wrote other books. And then finally, when I moved up here full time, and I started going to the John Brown farm more often, I began to realize that the story of this farm has never been told. There's no book about the story of the John Brown farm and all the things that have happened there. The burials, the memorials, and the celebrations, and everything it's never been told. And I said, that's what I have to do, especially in the times of 2015, 2016, 2017. Like, there's messages here that need to be told about this farm. It's very significant. And so I started writing that book. And that book grew to 160,000 words, if you know what that is. So when I sent that off to the publisher, they said, Sandy, you have 2 or 3 books here, okay? And they said, this is the book we're interested in. John Brown in New York. And I said, what? I've been going around telling everybody that I'm writing a book about the farm, and I'm not writing about John Brown. I'm not writing about him. And they said, no, this is, and I couldn't see it. And I thought about it, and I kept, thinking about it. And the more I thought about it and looked at what I had written, I realized, oh my gosh, I have stories that I know, because I've lived with them for 20 years, but other people don't know these stories of John Brown and his family and what happened at the farm during the years that they were there. Maybe I could do that. And it hit me that I was coming at John Brown from a very different angle than anyone else. Whatever. Hundreds of books written, at least probably 50 biographies. But I was coming at the John Brown story from the life of Mary Brown. I knew Mary Brown. I was reading everything about John Brown and North Alba and Harper's Ferry. I was reading it all through the eyes of Mary Brown, because that's what I had been researching. And I said, oh my gosh, so what I have is Mary Brown's perspective on this. Oh my gosh, I have to do this. I have to do this. And like I say, it took me like 3 rewrites, because I had to keep coming around to like, what is the story I'm telling? What is the message? And so, yeah, it's been 10 solid years I've been working on this book. But I also want to announce to you tonight, I also have a John Brown farm book coming out. The John Brown farm story is still very, very, very significant. And I'm about to sign a contract with a publisher for that book, hopefully in the next couple weeks. And hopefully that will be out the end of this year, the beginning of next year. You never know with these things. So, oh my gosh. So, yes. So I did have 2 books there. And I know I've confused everyone, because I kept going back and forth, and who knows. But I'm really happy with how things turned out. And it's wonderful when you have an editor who sees something, from a different perspective than what you've lived, and can really open your eyes to what you have and the story that you should be telling. So what I have is John Brown in New York, the man, his family, and the Adirondack Landscape, which covers from like 1849 up to 1863, when the family left North Alba. So I've really contained this book of what I'm mostly going to talk about tonight, to that time period when the Brown family is living here and interacting with the black settlers of Timbuktu that you've heard about, with the other local residents, and John Brown and some of the other family are going off to other places and whatever. And I try to tell this, again, through the eyes of the John Brown family. So I don't get into the whole Harper Ferry details and all that. You can read that in plenty of other books. But what I tell is, how did the women in North Alba hear about this? And what did they hear? And how did they feel? And how did they react? How did it impact the people in North Alba, this news? And how did they react? So that's part of that. And so the second book, which I don't have a title for, something like The History of the John Brown Farm. So it's the John Brown Farm, so it's specifically that lot 95 that is the John Brown historical site today. And mostly I picked that up from 1864, the middle of the Civil War, through today. And all the things that have happened there. All the memorials, just everything that's happened on that piece of ground, giving you like kind of a sense of place. So it really is two separate things, and another way to look at it is John Brown in New York, the early piece is, as I titled it, John Brown, the man. John Brown, the farmer, the husband, the father. As opposed to, after he's dead and buried and the family's moved away, the story is John Brown, the symbol. John Brown, his legacy. How do people remember him? How do people think of him? What do people say about him? So, John asked me, I think today or yesterday, so which book do I need to read? I said, John, of course you need to read both of them. So that's kind of the background story of how this came to be. Any questions about that? Anything you want to know, or I'll keep going?
I got a question.
Oh, of course. Yes.
John Brown died when?
December 2nd, 1859, he was hanged in Charlestown.
Right. So that was over 100 years ago,
160s, yeah.
And
Plus.
how did his farm stay as it is and not be cut up and things like that?
How did it? Isn't that miraculous?
It is.
Isn't that miraculous? We don't appreciate it, do we? That's my point. And so let me just ask this question. And it's not a trick question. It's
Sorry, was that a planted question?
no.
That's my question too.
No. So I know there's some people who know this, so, but how many, just this is from my knowledge. So how many people do you think are buried at the John Brown farm? How many people are buried? How many people think there's one person buried there? Excellent answer. How many people think there's two people buried there? How many people think there's three people buried there? Excellent guess. Because there are 3 graves there. So there are 3 graves there. How many people think there's 4? 5. Okay, good. 6. 7. Did you say 12?
I hang out there a lot, but I did say
You did say 3, but then you said no, it's 12. It is. I didn't have to go all the way. Thank you for the. I planted her. I planted her. There's 12 people buried there. Okay, how many women are buried there out of those 12? 0. That's right. How many black men are buried there?
0. I don't know.
2. Not many people know that. I'm supposed to be talking about the other book, but see, you got me excited now, because see, I'm jumping way ahead to like next year's lecture. At the John Brown farm, there's John Brown's grave. Then in 1882, the son Watson Brown, who died in Harper's Ferry, and his body was skinned and taken to a medical college. His skeleton was discovered and brought back in
More than a skeleton.
wow, okay. Some remains, let me say it that way. Brought back and buried in 1882. And then a third grave came along in 1999 with the bodies of 10 raiders, including son Oliver, is buried in that third grave. 10 of the raiders from Harper's Ferry. 2 who were hung and 8 who were buried in a trench along the Shenandoah River. So anyway, so that third grave has the remains of 10 men in it. Those are the intermingled bones of black men and white men who fought together, lived together, died together, prayed together, and we have it at the John Brown farm. Why don't we know that? Like, why don't we know that? Okay. So I'm going to actually read to you from the book. Oh, look at Kurt. Kurt's all excited. Kurt read a very early version of the first couple of chapters, but it's changed a bit. Get some water. Here we go. On this blustery day in early May of 2013, I emerged with the crowd solemnly milling about under a big white tent near John Brown's grave. We are not gathered for a funeral, but for the birthday remembrance known as John Brown Day. The guest of honor, comedian Dick Gregory, greets the enthusiastic crowd and then recalls his 3-hour ride from Albany. Upon entering the Adirondack Park near Lake George, his driver started pointing out the profusion of trees of all varieties: balsam, sugar maple, white pine. "Damn, that's all they told me," said Dick Gregory. "Look at the trees." As he tells the tale, he chuckles and shakes his head and mumbles something about the vast forest. The audience smiles and giggles a little, not wanting to offend the guest, but not sure what point he is trying to make. Gregory waits, motionless, until the crowd falls silent. "You want to talk about the damn trees? Well, they got trees all over the world." He takes a long pause before slowly releasing his verdict. "What they do not have that you have is John Brown." I know we have John Brown. I have been studying him and his family and Adirondack history for decades. You won't find John Brown's body in Torrington, Connecticut, the place of his birth, nor in Ohio, where he grew up, nor in Kansas, where he battled to make it a free state. His remains are not buried in Harper's Ferry, Virginia, where he fought against slavery, nor in Charlestown, where he was hanged. John Brown's body rests placidly in the rural town of North Elba, Essex County, in the Adirondack Park of northern New York State. "I wonder," says Gregory as he looks through the audience, "do you all really know what this is about? Who this person was and how evil this country was then?" Every year on his birthday, October 12th, Gregory visits Harper's Ferry. And every December 2nd, you know why December 2nd, John, now, right? Okay. Every December 2nd, he goes to Charlestown and hugs the tree next to where John Brown is hung. "I hug the tree," he says, "for the white man who gave up his life for a black man." Today, Gregory is here at John Brown's grave to say thank you. Because Brown did more than liberate slaves. He changed the whole world. Gregory adds, "If I had to write on the most important people on this planet, he, John Brown, would be number 1. I am dazed and dazzled, all intertwined in a jazz chord. My sureness crumples. I feel taken captive, transported to Gregory's reality. Has the natural scenery made me unable to see the lush significance of the human landscape? Right here, you have John Brown. Gregory seems certain that the audience does not grasp the magnitude of the grave a few feet over his left shoulder. This man is real, he affirms, and you have him. The words decimate the nebulous cloud hanging over the historic site. They clear away the haziness and blurredness. Other places have forests, mountains, and wilderness. Other historic sites have cabins and buildings where John Brown slept here. But North Alba has John Brown. All that remains of his mortal body is here. They may hang him on the gibbet. They may raise the victor's cry when they see him darkly swinging like a speck against the sky. Ah, the dying of a hero that the right may win its way is but sowing seed for harvest in a warm and mellow May. On this not-so-warm day in May, standing on the ground that Brown and his family once owned and lived on, I hear the fields echo the whack of the axe, hoe, and scythe. Dragonflies skim across the pond, leading my gaze toward the timber-framed barn. It is easy to imagine the pioneer life of the Brown family, milking cows, digging potatoes. Oh, the potatoes, I have to interrupt myself. One of my favorite lines is John Brown talks about, oh, this is such a great place for potatoes. And he says, nowhere have I seen such potatoes. I wish the Tuckers were here tonight. Okay, so their pioneer life, milking cows, digging potatoes, and carting sheep's wool on this hardscrabble farm. Here, far from Southern plantations and Boston abolitionists, they affirmed their roles in the fight against injustice and girded themselves for duty and sacrifice. Some served the cause at home, while others fought with weapons and lost their lives. From the doorway of this humble homestead, John Brown and his sons and neighbors said goodbye to their loved ones and left for far-off battles in Kansas and Harper's Ferry. Those scenes of violence feel continents apart from the John Brown farm, but the results of those distant events brought grief and suffering to these mountain plains. I feel it still as I gaze through the tall fence of iron pikes at the 3 burial mounds holding the mortal remains of John Brown, his sons Watson and Oliver, neighbors William and Dauphin Thompson, and 7 other men, black and white, who went to Harper's Ferry to liberate enslaved people. Dick Gregory is correct. The beauty of the trees can overshadow the human landscape. When the shadow is lifted, something unexpected happens. I still see the lush forest and wild mountain scenery surrounding the farm, but now I comprehend them fused into John Brown's persona. Frederick Douglass perceived Brown as a figure straight and symmetrical as a mountain pine. One admirer believed Brown's conscience was a Lake Placid, and his resolution to follow it firm as Marcy, firm as Whiteface. Another wrote, in these wilds there is something consonant with his own untamable spirit. He is the very air of freedom. Yes, John Brown marches on, and we have him. The historic site has been and still is a gathering place for solemn thoughts and a rallying spot for lovers of human rights. Here, John Brown is alive, still inspiring, and still agitating our mind, chafing our conviction, and gnawing at our conscience. I often recall John Brown saying, Providence will lead us all more properly to appreciate the amazing, unforeseen, untold consequences that hang upon the right or wrong doing of things seemingly of trifling account. Who can tell or comprehend the vast results for good or for evil that are to follow the saying of one little word? The 4 little words spoken by Dick Gregory, you have John Brown, kept festering in my brain. Those words of seemingly trifling account led me to more fully comprehend the significance of North Alba in the lives of the man and his family. The result is this book, John Brown in New York. Yes, John?
I've noticed there are mostly women here.
Yes?
I wonder what that statement is. I said mostly. It's very interesting.
It's very interesting. John had a lot of women friends. Women were, even at the time, were great admirers of John Brown and in sympathy with him. And that's all I have to say about that.
Okay.
Yeah, I could say a lot more about that. But that's a different lecture, John. That's my women's rights lecture.
I like that you looked at this through the families and through his wife's eyes. Because whenever I go through that house over there, I think, this woman lived there with the kids by herself through the winters. And it's extraordinary. And I'm just blown away by that. And it was isolated, and there was nobody there. So I love that you've studied that and written about that.
Yeah, and it's interesting putting that comment together with John. One of the things that I've been, because I'm just going to talk tonight. I mean, I have things I want to read, but it's okay with you. Let's talk about what you want to talk about. What I find fascinating is I've written about women's history, right? And that's been a big focus, and it took me to, write about national women's history and everything, and the whole women's suffrage statue and everything. And during the suffrage centennial, I started trying to find more, black women in this area who were into women's rights or other things, and that ties in with the Apple family who lived in Timbuktu and knew the Brown family, and so when I started writing this book, how do I say this? I think it's time to say, this is women's history, this is black history, this is peace movement history, this is this is all American history, and it was all happening at the same time, and we read it in these chunks where we don't understand that. These people that I'm writing about related to abolition and stuff are the same people who were in the women's rights movement. These people were they're all connected. And when we stop and think about it, we don't live our own lives that way. We don't oh, I'm just interested in flowers and I'm not paying attention to anything else, right? Or I'm just no, we have 7 things going on, right? And that's the way life was, but history, we don't tend to write history that way, because we tend to write it on this silo and this silo. And so what I love about this book, I'm so proud of myself, that this is women's history, this is black history, this is local residents' history. And it's all meshed together, because that's what life is like. And so the only way you can get a sense of what John Brown and his family, what their life was like, and perhaps begin to understand why they made the decisions they made, is if you actually throw yourself into that time and place, right? And really look at what are people saying at that time. Because when you look at what, excuse me, I must be talking a lot. Because as soon as you start looking at recollections of people, 20, 50, 80 years later, because we have a lot of recollections of people, especially about John Brown. We have a lot of recollections. The problem with recollections is, even the best of us, things didn't actually happen the way we remember them most of the time. And there's a great example in this book of, some of you know the Dana story, of Richard Henry Dana, who visited the Browns' house in 1849. Now, the Browns' house, not the John Brown farm. This is another thing, there's a lot of misinformation. Wow, you see how I go from this to this? Keep up with me, I'll get back. When the Browns first came here, they didn't move to the John Brown farm. And this is a big one. They moved to a rented house, the Flanders farm, and they rented this house for 2 years. So their first stay in North Alba from 1849 to 1851, they were at Flanders Farm, which is along what is today Route 73, not far from where the Cascade Welcome Center is now, right? So about 1.5 miles from where the farm is. So that's where they were first. And so a lot of things happened at that house that people think happened at this house, but it didn't. But this guy Dana, he's a famous author, he came and he visited them in 1849 at the Flanders house, and he wrote journal notes about it. Then in 1871, he realized, oh, you know what, that Mr. Brown that I met back in 1849? Oh my gosh, that's John Brown of Harper's Ferry fame. And so he wrote an article for the Atlantic Monthly, right? So he writes this article in this prestigious magazine, and from then on, every historian uses that article and thinks that he's writing about the John Brown farm, because he thinks he's writing about the John Brown farm, because he thinks he was at the John Brown farm, because that's what all the other accounts that he's read talk about. Have I confused you yet? Excellent. I'm glad I did. So, we have to be very careful about recollections, because what he said in 1871 is not in his journal. Did he make it up? Did he remember stuff that he hadn't remembered, or had he heard things that he, Kurt's saying yes, he heard things that he, So we have to be very careful about recollections. And so I tried as hard as I could to use quotes, and I found a lot of things in newspapers of the time, of what people actually said before John Brown became famous. Because after he became famous, first everybody wanted to know him because they wanted to have stories about him and, whatever. So you have to be very careful about these recollections. So, where did I start with that?
Oh, way back.
Way back to integrating history, right? Okay, yes.
A little bit more about your sources and how you did you go in some archives? Did you go to actually, it seems like an awful lot of, and then cross-checking, we probably have to cross-check.
Oh my gosh, yes. Yes, so,
No wonder it took you so long.
yeah, well, so I started this, like I said, I really started researching this 40 years ago. So, at that time, the internet and stuff really wasn't in existence.
Right.
So I was going to Akron, Ohio, to Hudson, Ohio, to Meadville, Pennsylvania, all these places that he lived where there are collections of letters and such. And of course, and Harper's Ferry, and I don't remember where else. Boston, there's a lot in Boston. But when I picked this back up again, like 10 years ago, then the internet had come along. So there's a lot that you can get online now. Even a lot of letters that are in collections, like in Boston, are online now. So that was wonderful. But I really have to say, I don't know if any of you knew Edwin Cotter, who was the caretaker there for many, many years. He passed away in 96, 98, something like that. His whole collection, I don't remember how many boxes, 150 boxes, are at SUNY Plattsburgh in the archives. He's the first person that I know of who actually started researching what actually happened here in North Alba in regards to John Brown. And he was in touch, like a lot of his correspondence are online, he was in touch with two premier John Brown collectors, historians, whatever, of the whole nation, Boyd Stutler and Clarence Gee, and Ed Cotter was writing letters with these people back and forth, working out, well, do you know who this guy is? Do you know who this is? Do you know when this happened? And they were sharing information and all of this way back when. So Ed Cotter really collected all of this. He also was the first one to say, Mary Brown is the one who was here. She's the one that deserves to be honored here. He got it. So knowing him, I got past a lot of the myths and the nonsense that's in a lot of books about the North Alba years, because Ed Cotter had looked it up and verified a lot of it. And the second person is Mary Mackenzie, who was the historian of Lake Placid in North Alba, and she also did a lot of research on the farm and the North Alba residents and all of that. So having known both of those two people was a great help to me in knowing what to look and to begin to, it really is a whole exercise unlike any of the other books I've done. This was about verifying sources. This was about trying to figure out what I can believe, what I can verify, this article has 3 errors in it that I know are errors, so I don't think I can believe the rest of it. Yes, John?
Last question.
I doubt it.
Is there a single item in John Brown's life that got him going on this track? That you know of?
On this track is an interesting phrase, John. What does on this track mean? Toward violence?
Well, I think of Martin Luther King Jr. as an example of modern history, similar to John Brown. There's signposts that he came across that motivated him, I would think.
Yeah, so let's talk about that. Let's talk about what we don't want to talk about, right?
Sure.
So, I'm going to come back to time and place. 1850. 1850, there are 3 million enslaved people in this country, and slavery is sanctioned to be illegal in this country. 1850, September of 1850, the Fugitive Slave Law goes into effect, which says, those of you in free states, you must not aid a fugitive slave. If you do, you will be fined, perhaps put in jail. You must actually capture that slave and report on what happens, or else you will be fined. And this was enforced. There was a fugitive slave law in 1793 that said, fugitive slaves must be returned to their owners, but basically it was kind of ignored because states had other laws and everybody kind of ignored. Now the federal government was saying, right, you must aid in the capture of fugitive slaves. That got a lot of people upset. Okay, I'm going to interrupt that right there to talk about something because I want to give you something to be happy about before. I didn't want to make out all these notes for nothing. Let me see. Let me get to the book here. What are we talking about? Oh yeah. Here it is. Here it is. Here it is. So, here it is. So, goes into effect somewhere in the middle of September 1850. On October 16, 1850, Essex County men from the towns of Jay, Keene, St. Armand, Wilmington, and North Elba met at the Jay Baptist Church and stated their verdict on slavery and the new fugitive slave law. They said the framers of the Constitution did not intend for that document to justify the extension and perpetuity of slavery. The framers spoke of slavery as the greatest curse that could be inflicted on our country. This group of North Country citizens said the fugitive slave law was unauthorized and should be repealed. The alleged fugitive should be able to use any degree of resistance necessary to prevent his capture. These Essex County citizens opposed slavery because they regarded it as a sin against God and an outrage on the rights of men. They felt compelled by duty to God and love to humanity to use all means to eradicate it. Essex County citizens, 1850. I'm actually going to read their resolution. We, the people of Jay, Wilmington, Keene, North Elba, and St. Armand, are not unmindful of the fact that eternal vigilance is the price of liberty. Oh my gosh. Is it 1850 or is it 2026? Wait. We hold ourselves in readiness at all times and under all circumstances to unite in an honest effort to reform abuse and correct error. And in the discharge of such duty, we will never swerve or falter. Principles, not men, is our motto. And, if need be, party lines may be obliterated if the character of our country abroad and its honor at home demand it.
Post that.
Yes.
It's in the book.
We need it publicly posted.
Yeah.
So, and these people who are saying, we're going to break the law, we are going to break the law, we're going to use any means, we are going to break the law, they didn't hide. They voted to have this put in 3 different newspapers, including 2 in Albany, and some of their names are posted there. The 2 of the men who wrote the resolutions were Ido Osgood and Roswell Thompson, who are John Brown's neighbors, and of course, 2 of the Thompson boys will end up going with John Brown to Harper's Ferry, and they're buried at the farm over there. So John, so some people in the North Country, some were strong abolitionists. Some were not. We can talk about them later, or not. So, 1850, fugitive slave law. It's actually getting a lot of people riled up. It's, as John Brown says, it's making more abolitionists than ever before. 1854, what happens? Kansas-Nebraska Act, right? So we had this Missouri Compromise that said, 36, whatever, parallel, right? There's not going to be any slavery outside of that, right? And now we come along and say, you know what? Now we're going to start letting all these states just decide for themselves whether they want to be free or not.
Oh, it would be so fair though, because the settlers will vote on it.
Yeah, right, right. What it basically becomes, and I can read you where, you can read it, that, it's already predicted way in advance that what this is going to do is start a war. Because basically, this is now saying, are we going to have westward expansion of slavery, or are we not? And if Kansas becomes a slave state, all the rest of them are going to fall and think that's like, this is disaster. So, this is a really big deal, the Kansas thing. And then in 57, we're going to have the Dred Scott decision, the Supreme Court decision that basically says enslaved people, and basically all black people, have absolutely no rights. They're not citizens. They have no rights. No rights in court, no rights to anything. A white man's word and whatever trumps everything. Okay, so, where did John Brown start thinking, this isn't going so well? Very early on, he had, his father was a big abolitionist. He helped found, was a trustee at Oberlin. I mean, so it was in his family. Believe it or not, it was also in Mary Brown's family. Mary Brown was actually born in Granville in Washington County, just south of the Adirondacks. An abolition family, and that whole area, Whitehall, Granville, that whole area is very much a hub of the Underground Railroad. Because think about transportation at the time, right? It's at the head there of Lake Champlain, and you've got the railroads coming in from Boston in the east, and from Albany and whatever, Buffalo there, and so it's a big transportation hub, and so it's a big hub for the Underground Railroad. So Mary Brown's family are abolitionists, and at age 9 they go out to Pennsylvania, and that's where she meets John Brown, and et cetera, et cetera. We can talk about that later if you want to. But getting back to John's question, was that half an hour ago? Oh my gosh. So this is in their blood. From the very beginning, he wants to adopt a black boy and raise him in his family and show that, the black boy is just as capable as his children and all of this. Elijah Lovejoy, that gets him upset in 1838 or 37, okay. And, but John Brown never uses violence until when? 1856, May of 1856. So you can read lots of books that will say, oh, John Brown was violent, he was violent from the beginning and he was always violent, and no, he wasn't. 20 some years of talking, trying, petitioning, working, etc. And look where it was getting in the 1850s. Yes, John.
I didn't realize the boy was black.
Oh my gosh! Oh my God, that's fantastic. Let's come back to that. The statue. He's talking about the statue. He never realized the boy was black. I think that's fantastic, John. But all these things, so everybody, the Democrats, remember the parties were kind of reversed back then. The Democrats, Southern sympathizers and such, they were like, oh, slavery's gonna slowly go away. Just, you abolitionists quit harassing them, and they'll take care of it, and it'll go away, and whatever. But look at what's happening, right? Look at what's happening in 1850, fugitive slave law. Kansas, actually, slavery is expanding. By 1859, you've got 4 million enslaved people. Slavery isn't going away. You've still got them trying to expand westward. And some slave states are actually talking about, let's reopen the foreign importation of slaves. So I can't believe anybody who's talking about that, this was going to end. And it's interesting, John Brown started saying this in words in 1850 of I think we're going to have to keep our powder dry. I think we're going to have to use weapons. But black abolitionists, who John Brown was much more in tune and much more in line with black abolitionists than white abolitionists, they were saying this back in the 40s. They saw that talk wasn't going to work, that moral suasion wasn't going to work, and that it's a sin, it's a war, it's brutal, it's inhuman. But Kansas is the John Brown. He's coming back to North Elba. He's gonna live here. You know, he's cut himself off from business, and he's gonna live here. And then he's decided he's not gonna go there and fight. Okay, he's gonna stay here. But his sons go to Kansas to be settlers, because they see it as a good opportunity, and they start getting harassed by all these pro-slavery people, and I don't want to get into all of this, but anyway, they write to John Brown and say, we need weapons more than we need bread, we're going to get killed. And so the reason John Brown goes to Kansas is to help defend his family, right? To defend his sons, his grandchildren who are living in Kansas. And also, of course, to combat these pro-slavery forces. But even when he gets to Kansas, he's there through the fall, the winter, and the spring. He's there like 9 months before any weapons are ever used. So, but we can talk about the weapons and stuff if you want to. But did I answer your question, John?
Very well.
Oh, okay. Kurt, yes.
You grabbed my heart when you mentioned what it was like to hear the news here. Would you mind giving us a snippet from the book, or just your memory what it was like for Mary and everybody to find out what had happened and how they did it?
Yeah, I don't know if I don't think I marked that at all. Well, they're shocked, of course. You know, Ruth Brown, the daughter, says, I didn't think it was possible. You know, I didn't think it was possible for him to fail. A lot of them are so struck that they can't speak and they can't cry. They go days without crying. And one of their fears is that, well, do you want me to go into who's there? Do you know who's there at the farmhouse? So who's there at the farmhouse? Mary Brown, Martha, oh gosh, I don't know if I can get Martha, the wife of Oliver, thank you. Martha, the wife of Oliver, who's pregnant with Oliver's baby, and Martha had been at the Kennedy farm and left before the fighting started. So she's there, and she's 16, just got married a year ago, pregnant with his baby. And we have Annie, who also had been at the farmhouse. So they knew all these men who got killed. They were there down in Maryland at the farmhouse before Harper's Ferry. So they knew all of these men. And thought very, very highly of them, because these men were going to go. They were willing to die for this cause. So you get Mary, keep going. I said Annie, right? Annie. Oh, I thought I said Annie at the farmhouse. Isabel, who is the wife of Watson, who has a newborn baby that was just born when Watson was going to Harper's Ferry, and he got killed. My mind is a blank kind of, but there's 3 widows of men living at the house, like all the daughter-in-laws are living there at the farm with Mary. So there's the 3 widows, there's the other daughters who knew these, there's Mary who, you know, her husband's in prison with wounds, we don't know what's gonna happen. I can't even imagine. I can't even imagine. And they're also afraid that, what is this gonna do to the cause? John Brown's friends are probably going to abandon him. Like, everybody's gonna think this is horrible. That he's, you know, that they attacked Harper's Ferry. And Thomas Higginson comes, an abolitionist from Boston, to visit them. So he wants to take Mary to Virginia. He thinks that she can convince John to let them rescue him from jail. Because John says, no, you're not gonna rescue me. This is, you know, this is the best thing I can do in my life, is to be hung. This is the best way that I can serve God in the cause. And so Higginson comes to the Adirondacks. He's never been here before. He's just blown away by the scenery here. Just like completely amazed, going through Wilmington Notch. He's like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna fall off the road. Like, he just thinks it's amazing. And when he gets to the farm and they realize that John Brown's friends, the abolitionists in Boston and such, no, they gathered money, they're sending a lawyer to defend John down in Virginia. And they're raising funds to, you know, help the family and help the other raiders escape it. And the family is like, oh my gosh, it's like the clouds lifted and this is gonna be okay. And, you know, and their one response is this gonna help the cause? That's what they're concerned about. Is this gonna help the cause? Right? There's more in the book. I just can't remember it all at the moment. What else did I want to say? You know, I was going to go into a whole thing with, there's a whole chapter in here about wilderness, about the high peaks and higher law. And there's more about this in the other book also, about the connection of John Brown and wilderness and kind of the environmental movement. And you're going like, what? What? Again, yes, there are connections. There are connections here. The Brown kids hiked mountains. Owen hiked Algonquin. Somewhere, I don't know where. What did I do that? I don't know where I went to. Owen hiked Algonquin all by himself. He got up to the top and he said, I don't remember the exact words, but something like, I saw his kingdom on earth. And he stayed alone all night, except for his dog. He had his dog. And of course, what John Brown said about the Adirondacks was, everything reminds one of God's omnipotence. John Brown loved this place. This was the only place he really ever called home. And even though he wasn't here much, he always called it home. It was where he most felt at home. It's where his family was. And it's where he felt close to God. He appreciated nature and that connection of nature and God, which gets into that whole God's law. And I think I started out with a quote, something about, you know, a law higher than the Constitution. And this is what Emerson and Thoreau talked about, of that there is nature's law. There is a law that is higher than man's rules. And if I could just find where I wanted to read something about that. Yeah, where did I put those other pieces of paper? Just talk among yourselves. Here it is. Well, Kurt, you've probably heard these before, but. Emerson and Thoreau were writing about the connection of slavery and nature a decade before Harper's Ferry ever happened. Emerson said, Nothing is more absurd than to complain of a party of men united in opposition to slavery, as well complain of gravity, or the ebb of the tide. Who makes the abolitionist? The slaveholder. Emerson asserted that slavery was a violation of nature's law and would eventually be punished. He said, whatever is false cannot be enacted. This law of nature is universal. Gravity is only one of its languages. Justice is another. Any attempt to violate it is punished and recoils on the man. Nature is not so helpless, but that it can rid itself of every crime. Now, Thoreau wasn't so optimistic, but he has a great story. In 1854, when, slavery was legal in the South and the fugitive slave law had gone into effect and fugitives were being captured in the North, Thoreau felt that he had lost his country. Even at Walden Pond, he found walks in nature were spoiled by thoughts of wicked men. And then one day, he saw a water lily in a swamp, a fine white flower growing out of the slime and muck of the earth. To Thoreau, the lily represented the possibility of men of purity and courage rising up, despite the sloth and vice of man. I'm sorry, history is never applicable to the present moment. Remember that? He said, just as nature had not been a partner to the Missouri Compromise, men of virtue should stand up and refuse to compromise. Slavery and servility should be buried or perhaps used for manure. Yes.
So those men, those thoughts came from those men in the 1840s?
1854, that is from the
Okay.
Slavery in Massachusetts article by Thoreau, but in Walking, he also talked about this, and yeah, Emerson, I think, was more in the 40s, late 40s.
Thanks, that helps me understand why both of those men stood up in 1859 while John Brown was in jail and rented lecture halls and
Yes,
spoke on his behalf.
yes, Thoreau was the first one. You're gonna love the chapter in the book. I mean, I just love it because, like, what this connection? Yes, this connection between wilderness, environmentalism, kind of, and yeah, it's all connected, right? Who would think? But so here's one more thing. I love this quote, and again, I'm not referring to today. Thoreau said, "What is wanted is men, not of policy, but of probity," which means, because I didn't really know what that meant, but it means like righteousness, morals, right? Honesty. So what is wanted is men, not of policy, but of probity, who recognize a higher law than the Constitution or the decision of the majority. Ooh! Start reading some more Thoreau because it will really inspire you. I'm gonna stop. I'm just taking questions, right? That's all I'm doing. And I don't mean to be like defending John Brown. So I don't. My point is not to defend John Brown. My point is to understand John Brown. Is to just understand, perhaps, why he did what he did. And I actually find it very easy if you believe in what John Brown said and what his family said, then you realize that his actions in Kansas and Harper's Ferry are completely consistent with the way he and his family lived their life. It's not like all of a sudden he went mad. Like if if you can believe the possibility that there's a white man who can be so egalitarian, that can so believe in equality that he's willing to give up his life for black men. If you can possibly believe that that could actually exist in this world, then you can, I think, understand why John Brown did what he did. Whether it's right or wrong, whatever that means, you can understand that it's consistent. And so, here it comes, Kurt. So what I finally came to, after 3 revisions of this book, after I made the final changes, I said, no, I got more. Who John Brown is in the Adirondacks is who John Brown is.
Yeah.
That's my bumper sticker.
Yeah.
Do you like that?
Yes.
Okay. That's what I realized. And Willis Hodges, who is the founder of Blacksville, the Timbuktu is in North Alva, Blacksville is in Franklin County, and knew John Brown throughout his life, not just in the Adirondacks. But Willis Hodges said, now see, now I'm jumping to a different piece of paper. This one is bonkers. I can't keep my, all right, I'm just gonna say it off, I don't remember the exact words, but Willis Hodges said, the reason John Brown went to Harper's Ferry in Kansas is the exact same reason that he went to the Adirondacks. And then it's Higginson, I think, who said this kind of the same thing in saying that, look at the tombstone. Okay, we have the tombstone. Right down the road, we have the tombstone that says, for adherence to the cause of freedom. And that's the same reason he went to Kansas, the same reason he went to Harper's Ferry, the same reason he moved to the Adirondacks, to help black settlers, to help the black race. So, I don't know how I got there, but I want to read something that I think Thoreau is very wise. I think Thoreau got it. And so, as you said, Cheryl, he immediately, on October 30th, so Harper's Ferry ended on October 18th. So October 30th, just like right afterwards, he's out there making a plea for John Brown in Concord, and he says, we don't know the facts about what really happened. Even his enemies are saying it's among the best planned and executed conspiracy that ever failed. And I hear other people saying, well, what will he gain by it? As if he were expected to fill his pockets from the enterprise. Such a one has no idea of gain, but in the worldly sense. If it does not lead one to a surprise party, if it does not get a new pair of boots or a vote of thanks, it must be a failure. But John Brown won't gain anything by it. But as far as the violence part of it, again, this is what Thoreau said. I do not wish to be killed. I do not wish to kill or to be killed. And I think all of us agree with that. We don't want to see anyone using violence, nor do we want to use violence. But I can foresee circumstances in which both these things would be, by me, unavoidable. We preserve the so-called peace of our community by deeds of petty violence every day. Look at the policeman's billy in handcuffs. Look at the jail. Look at the gallows. Look at the chaplain of the regiment. We are hoping only to live safely on the outskirts of this provisional army. So we defend ourselves and our hen roosts and maintain slavery. I know that the mass of my countrymen think that the only righteous use that can be made of Sharps rifles and revolvers is to fight duels with them. So I know the only righteous use of Sharp's rifles is to fight duels with them, or when we are insulted by other nations, or to hunt Indians, or shoot fugitive slaves with them. I think that for once, the Sharp's rifles and the revolvers were employed in a righteous cause. The tools were in the hands of one who would use them. That's what Thoreau said. Okay. I can't read any more off my papers. That's destroyed. Questions, comments, thoughts?
I said I wouldn't have another
I
question.
know. I should have taken bets on that.
But this is it's not a question.
Oh, go ahead.
Today I was watching on television the building of the Pentagon in the 40s, which came about because of Pearl Harbor. And they realized communications needed to be better. So they decided to build this huge office building, so to speak. It would have had 256 bathrooms, white and men, and blacks, okay?
Yes.
And there was some legislation that didn't have that happen. That's not a question, it's just an observation.
Yes. Well, as John Brown said, you can very easily put me to death. I'm almost done with now. But this question, the Negro question, is not to be settled. Right? It's not settled yet. I can't remember the exact words, but it's still not settled, right? 160 some years later, yeah. But that's okay. We keep working at it. I personally find the John Brown Farm, when I go there, for me, it is a place of hope. For me, it is a place I go to feel good. And to feel that there's hope in the world, and people, I've said that to everyone in the room, thank you. You're not looking at me like, what the heck is she talking about? But they do, they look at me like it. And it's like, no.
They haven't been there yet.
They haven't, yeah, they haven't felt it yet. They haven't felt it yet. Because I think it's a very, very special place, and I think there are hard lessons there. And as I say, you know, it's still gnawing at our conscience. It's still, there are questions that make us think that are not comfortable questions. Or as I call them, I now use the term, there are a lot of inconvenient truths in history. But if we hide those inconvenient things, we're not going to learn, right? We're not going to learn anything from history. We're not going to see how we got here and how to start healing, because that's really the message. And again, for me, the message of John Brown is that here's the possibility. Again, regardless of, you know, what, you know, none of us want to use violence or accept violence or say that things have to come to be that way, doesn't mean we can't understand why. Because for me, you have to remember that there were 4 million people in this country being treated as property who had no rights. What are you supposed to do after you've tried 30, 40 years of other solutions? What are we supposed to do? Oh, that's a really bad way to leave you guys. Somebody ask a question. Yes.
Talk about the statue.
Oh, the statue, yes. So the second book, John is a wonderful photographer. If you haven't met John Aldrich of Lake Placid, he's a wonderful photographer. And so I'm thinking of using his photo of the statue that's at the John Brown farm of John Brown with the slave boy that's there as you enter the farm, because I interpret that statue as a lot of the meaning of the farm of that, again, in that time and place of the 1930s when that statue was put up, given by black people, mostly from Philadelphia and New York, funds put that up, this is how they thought of John Brown. This is how we praise them of him being like kind of a fatherly, patriarchal figure of black people, and especially of black children, of thinking of the generations to come. So anyway, I really like that statue, and some people see it as hierarchical because they see it as a symbol of a white man who's tall and up here, and a black boy who's, you know, smaller. And so they see it as this inequality. I see it as representing John Brown's fight for equality. So, you know, that's what art's all about. I love it. But I think the fact that John, who's been to the John Brown farm 1,000 times, and he just realized, because the statue's actually what color? It's actually bronze, right? And it's becoming kind of
Green.
greenish, right? And so John's like, I never realized that is. I love that he just stole the line of my second book. You just stole the punch. The punch is, if you see that as hierarchical, if you see it as a white and a black, that's what you are seeing, right? That's what you are seeing. Because what's in front of you is bronze. The two figures are the same color. Like the two figures are bronze,
That's great.
right? So if you're seeing black and white, you know, of course I read that into it too, because that's the features. But really, this is how we need, this is, you know, the things in our head that like, oh yeah, they're bronze. They're both the same. I'm doing that.
We learned to do that.
Exactly.
One of my kids, there was a black kid who lived across the street, and one of his other friends said, so what does Steven look like? And my son said, well, he has black hair and brown eyes. That's all.
Exactly.
And I was like, yes.
Right. Exactly.
That we would live in a community in Massachusetts where there are black people who live there, and our kids, that's the way life is.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
One more observation.
Oh.
I find it very interesting that there isn't a black person in this.
Yeah,
in this
well, there are
here.
many black people up there.
I think that's very interesting. Makes a statement, doesn't it?
But there are many who live up here.
Well, that I understand. You walk on Main Street like glasses, you know it's from a sports type activity or something like that. Yes, we still have our problems.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, absolutely. But then again,
Challenges maybe is a better word.
and we're the ones who have the work to do. We have work to do. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. More questions? Are we done? Oh my gosh, I went past the time. So let me just say one thing. So this book, John Brown in New York, is coming out through SUNY Press, Excelsior Editions, so you can pre-order it. And I have coupons over there for 30% off. There's a code you put in, so you can get 30% off. Unfortunately, I don't control the price of the books, but you know, that's that. And the other one will be coming out soon, so watch for the news.
Wait for my picture.
Oh. So thank you for coming out tonight. You're a wonderful audience.